So one of the other areas that investors are still concerned about is inflation. And do private markets and specifically real assets provide an inflation hedge, or is that really a misconception?
I don't think it's a misconception. I think there is some truth in it, but it's somewhat a simplification or maybe simplistic to look at it. Okay, it's great, great hedge because private market strategies comes in all kinds, and the hedge you get through them for inflation is sometimes good or clean and sometimes not so clear. And I would say at a very high level, you've got infrastructure equity in some parts, the less corporate part, regulated utilities in some jurisdictions or some regulatory regimes offer a very good level of protection against inflation. In some scenarios, I'll get into that, and some other strategies which are much closer to the corporate world, are not as straightforward. But in the credit world, in the corporate credit world, the fact is, a lot of the paper is on a floating rate basis, and you get an inflation protection through the adjustment to nominal rates, which are charging to the borrower. And typically, there is a good correlation between the level of nominal rates and that inflation. So that's a form of protection. Going back to the good hedge you get on infrastructure, I think it holds true in the main, but this is in normal type of inflation. I think we've got to be very wary about scenarios where you're deeply negative or significantly in negative territory for inflation, or in very high inflation scenarios where then you get into other problematics which touch on the political acceptability of holding up to regulatory regime that was based on an inflation protection for the service provider or the asset owner. And I think we've got to be mindful of that, is that those regulatory regimes sometimes have been thought about in normal circumstances.
Yep.
And so we think about inflation, let's call it between 1% and 6%. When you get out of of that range, I think we need to think carefully whether the protection holds or whether the regulatory risk starts to bite in another way and undermine that protection.